behaviors, not even.
Well, part of that is the woman's sex drive doesn't kick in for a lot longer than the male sex drive is. So he's motivated by more physical things than that. It flips when the women are in their 30s and 40s. Trust me. Okay, I got to take a quick break, and we will be back with more on this fascinating stuff with Aditi Paul right after this. And we are back, and we're diving into all things love, sex, and relationships. Now, has one of the big factors, and again, I'm not the first person to point this out, the fact that the women no longer feel as driven and motivated to get married, settle down, have kids in their early 20s takes a lot of the subliminal or overt incentive away from pairing up and hooking up, that she's like, I'm not driven to date in the way I used to.
Mm-hmm. That, and there are also environmental factors. And I talked about this in my previous study, equating it to relation shopping. That is, you have a 5-story, I'm in New York City, so we have like the huge Macy's store. But do I want to lock into a dress that I saw on the first floor? There are 7 other floors. Like, let me have a look-see. So just the abundance of
the bigger, better deal
options and making a better deal. Like, what if there is another person who's better in the next stop? Like, do I really want to lock myself down? And that too, lock myself down enough to navigate these bumps that are so typical in the initial phase of a relationship. Like, is that worth my time to heal this relationship versus just getting a new one?
Is there something to be said for the traditional labeling, dating, boyfriend, girlfriend seem boring to people? Like, that's what our parents did. That's not for me. I want to be young. I want to be polyamorous. I want to be in an open relationship. I want to experiment. I want to do a lot of these things. Is that a driving factor that prevents people from just like, hey, do you want to go on a date? It seems weird. It seems old fashioned.
Yeah, but you know what? The thing is, I mean, here's the situation. I haven't seen apathy toward traditional relationships among Gen Z. Like, there's an acceptance of sorts, if you may, where if this is the route that you have chosen and that's good for you. I mean, you do you. But if you want to be that person who wants to take their time, that's fine too. Just as an example, I have 2 weddings coming up this year, and both of them are my students, and they're significantly young. But yeah, those are the 2 data points I'm using it. It's not statistically significant in any way, but that just goes to show that there's an openness toward relationships, and also the fact that one of the driving forces of being in a relationship is sometimes to look cute on the gram. I mean, you can only flex so much as a single person, but if you are #relationship goals, now you have clout, now you have a following, now you have social media engagement, like, what they see with...
You need the boyfriend who has the selfie skills. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. You make a brand of yourself. So those are factors that still motivate them to be in a relationship. But the resilience of like fighting it out or making things work, that could have been dampened by these other factors that are out there, where they can just walk out and be in a new thing without having to work too hard for it.
Are kids having sex? Kids, I sound like you now. Yeah. Are they having sex at the same rate as they did at a younger, like, if you look at those statistics, I believe they've leveled off, at least if you're talking about the high school sexual numbers. They're not, out of control. They've kind of stabilized. Is that the same when you get in people in their 20s and early? Is it about the same?
They do have like a significant number of students who I surveyed. A majority of them had at least 1 to 5 hookup partners. And then again, hookup does not mean sex. It could mean just upper body stuff. What I did see is they might not be having sex with multiple partners. Because when I asked students in my data set to talk about how many times did you hook up with this one person, they hook up once every month or once every 2, 3 months. It's with the same person.
Huh.
So they're having elongated casual relationships with the same person. Now, does that count as more sex if you have sex 5 times with the same person or one time with 5 different people?
Mhm.
Now,
Yeah, I
that's
think
not
it's the
counted
same.
as.
It's the same number of times, I suppose. And how conscious are young people of safe sex?
They are very conscious. They are a majority of students mentioned that they used condoms during or contraceptives during their first hookup. But surprisingly, more men said that they used condoms than women. Not to say that women do not are not conscious of their safety. It could also speak to the fact that women have less negotiation power when they're hooking up with somebody who is a stranger and they insist that they're clean, or there's something called stealthing that happens where the male partner takes off his condom without the female partner knowing that he has. So there are multiple ways
Which
to
I
keep
think is a
this
crime in a
dating.
couple states now.
Oh yeah,
There's
yeah.
legislation on
So
that now. Yeah. Um,
yeah, so that was concerning to see, but hopefully they are conscious of the fact that they should be safe.
how how are they defining their relationship? Are there different stages to this where it's like, the traditional, like, are we boyfriend, girlfriend? Are we dating? What is the status of this? Is there either terminology or levels that I'm not familiar with that, they're, more than sort of everything is sort of, it's complicated in life, I suppose, but.
Yeah, they do a lot of talking. They do a lot of Snapchatting. So as an example, this one student said, we were chatting in class on that day. Afterwards, we were hanging out after class and got dinner. Then we went back to his dorm and hung out. Then it happened. And then another student says, we have been texting and Snapchatting every day. We set up a few days later in the week. We ended up meeting at a bar before the setup date and talked for a while with each other and friends. We decided to go back to my place where we proceeded in awesome sex. And I think the student was being facetious. But I mean, some of the things that come off from these answers is that they're doing what you and I would call a date.
Yeah,
Right?
but if you call it a day, if you the
They're
farther,
not.
the more specific you label it, the more likely you are to have labeled it incorrectly in the views of the other person, and the more likely you are to get hurt.
Right.
The more casual you can convince yourself it is, and the two of you, it is game playing. I get it. It's emotional compartmentalization, but you're trying to put in this area. Well, if it's this, it's not that, and then I won't feel this. It's a challenge.
Yeah, and people can be talking to multiple people, right? So when you're saying you're dating, that makes it exclusive. But if you're saying, oh, we're just hanging out, like we're just seeing where this goes, you're keeping the door open for having multiple partners and getting an easy exit. But the way I think about it is it's not that students or Gen Z is getting discouraged from being in a relationship, or they don't want to be in a relationship. They do want intimacy. As a matter of fact, emotional intimacy was one of the driving forces of male sexual satisfaction in my study. So they do crave that, they do appreciate that. But the trajectory of a relationship development has added a few steps than what we are used to. So back in the day, it was meet each other, marriage. Then it became meet, date, marriage. Now it's and then it became casual sex, hang out, like, date, marriage. Now it's talking, hanging out, having sex, taking it easy.
Let's go to a concert.
And then eventually, you get into a relationship.
How much is the, I won't say the lack of, but the diminishing of traditional gender roles? Everything from him paying to holding, that you brought up, open the door. I'm talking about holding the door. Things that sort of were lead and follow mechanisms that led to a certain environment where dating could flourish. We've eliminated a lot of that, and a lot of that is good that we've eliminated. And, younger women are more independent or feel their independence a lot earlier. They have ramped up their masculine energy in a way. Men, to their credit, especially the young ones, are more introspective, and they are thinking about things, and they are, if you want to label it, softer in a good way. That has sort of, sociologically we've changed a little bit, but I'm not sure physiologically we're wired differently, but it does affect dating.
Yeah. Gen Z has both conformed to gender roles and defied gender roles. So in ways that they have conformed to gender roles, you're right. That is, men still are responsible for discussing plans and asking for that hookup or that hangout. And a disproportionate number of men reported them initiating the sexual activities during hookup sexual activities. I make it sound like almost prison-like at this point. And then I asked women, who initiated the sexual activity, and they said their partners did. So in that way, yes, they are conforming to gender norms. Where they're defying gender norms is this switch up of what we have considered traditionally female-oriented and traditionally male-oriented. So in terms of men, they do like talking. They do like hanging out. They do like spending time with this partner. And women have become more proactive in making plans. That is, if you're meeting somebody over a dating app, do you want to meet up for coffee? That has become more normal and accepted. The way in which the sexual double standard does play out is how they talk about their hookups. Men still have that societal unbiasedness toward them, where it gratifies them for their sexual prowess. So they are more likely to say we fucked, or she gave head. Some of these very graphic, very clear-cut terms. But women, on the other hand, they say, and then it happened, and one thing led to another.
We did it.
And you know how things go. We did it. So and not even it is still too strong a word, which suggests has a clear meaning. So they keep it ambiguous, almost to soften the blow.
We messed around.
Labeled a certain way. Yeah. So in that way, the sexual double standard still exists in the hookup landscape. It's not as gender egalitarian as we think it is.
Well, have there been influencers? I mean, I guess there's always been pop culture influencers, sort of the behavior of whether it's Miley Cyrus or the Kardashians or anything, that the younger and the more sort of sexually empowered you are seems to be rewarding in a way. Are women embracing that, or is that just they're like, nope, that's an exception?
I know that they're embracing it in a very twisted way and in a very non-helpful way. So one of the questions that I asked in the survey was, were you touched by your partner without your consent? And 21% of men said that they were, and these were heterosexual men. So you add this idea of female sexual empowerment and taking charge of your sexuality, and you add the fact that the conversation around consent is always talked about in a way where men should ask for consent and women should give consent. So with the lack of women consent from both areas, and the masculinity which dictates, oh, you got sex, what are you complaining about? It leads to a very muddy place where men are being touched without their consent. Could be, and they're not complaining about it, or they don't feel safe enough to say that this is something of a violation. And add to that women are being empowered to take charge of their sexuality without also being stressed upon the importance of asking for consent from their partners in heterosexual meetings.
Yeah. One, it is interesting. You want to be sexually empowered and you want to be, but at some point there's an element of society that's not ready to accept whatever you're accepting, You bring up one thing, in your book, the concept of sugar dating at a far younger age than I thought existed. Explain that and explain how that's something that exists even with college students.
So sugar dating is basically compensated dating. For a long, I mean, in a number of discourses, it has been equated to prostitution, but sugar dating websites have maneuvered